Okay, I realized we had speech variety there that we didn't really talk about. So if you just watch the video with the little Indonesian French boy speaking Indonesian with his mother, speaking French with his father. A lot of times, multilingual parents will do this because they want the kid to be able to talk to his grandparents, his mother's parents, in perfect Indonesian, and to operate as a perfectly insider Indonesian. Um, but then they want the little boy to be able to talk to his French grandparents in perfect French, sounding like he's from France as well, because he's going to have dual citizenship and move back and forth easily. Um, but then the little boy also, and so parents raising these kids, dad will only speak to him in French and mom will only speak to him in Indonesian, and he grows up learning it basically because he's prior to the age of 11 or whatever, he's going to learn it perfectly. He's never going to have an accent in Indonesian or an accent in French. Um, and a lot of families do this. He also has the additional wiggle of speaking perfect English, or at least British English. Did you notice he said try it tomorrow? Right. He didn't say tomorrow. He said tomorrow. So it was a British pronunciation. So his daycare center is the English speaking person who helps him is from Britain, and so he's tracking onto her variety of English, and that's fun. The best story I have of that is my friend in Morocco who got a scholarship to Poland when he was 18, and so he went to Poland. He was like like a study abroad student, and so he had to take Polish. Intensive Polish for 6 months or something like that, and then he mainstreamed into the classes in agriculture. And he met a beautiful girl there who was similar young and on a scholarship as well from Brazil. And she had also done the thing, so they fell in love in Poland, and then they got married and came back, and he got a job in Morocco. Um, in Morocco, of course, they speak Arabic, and she doesn't really speak Arabic. They speak French too, and she's a little better in French. And then they have, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 kids, and the kids grow up. She only speaks Brazilian Portuguese to them. He only speaks Arabic to them. So they grow up speaking both languages perfectly. When they go back to Brazil to see their grandparents, they can speak Portuguese down there. Staying in Morocco, they're speaking Arabic and French. But when the whole family gets together, um, what's the one language that they all speak the best? And that is Polish. Okay. So to get back to the colors, I had, let's see where we are. We're talking about colors, and we're talking about women and their knowledge of colors. I have an example of someone a man who knows at a glance um, different shades of red. He can look at it from 100 feet away and say, no, that is not cherry red, that's candy apple red. And what does he do? He restores cars, right? And specifically classic cars, and specifically classic Mustangs. Um, and there was a product line change, and so, like, in 68, 65 to 68 it was candy apple, and then in 69 they started doing cherry, and it's a different shade. And so if you have a 68 car and you have the cherry red on it, sorry, you just blew $5,000 on your paint job. It's a beautiful car, but it's not going to win any awards because it's not to spec. And so he has to know these things. He has to be able to tell people that, because he works in the industry. Um, so basically, to show that it's economic necessity that drives this perception, because it's really just being able to name the colors, not necessarily to see them. It all has to do with language. Um, let's see, back to color. Oh, right, yeah. So we had this, the color blue. Here is another example of the color blue. No one could describe the color blue until modern times. I'm sorry you can't see the whole caption there. Uh, Basically, stop seeing this ad. Why are you showing me this ad? It's covering content. Okay. So until relatively recently in human history, blue did not exist. Um, in the Odyssey, Homer describes the wine dark sea. Why is it wine dark and not deep blue? Because they just didn't have the word for blue. Um, so when we live in these languages that we speak, sometimes we can see certain colors and not others. Um, Every language has a color for black and for white, or for dark and for light. Then the third color you always have is red, and then after red, yellow, and then after yellow, green. The last of the colors to appear in every language is blue, and every language follows this. The only ancient culture to develop a word for blue was the Egyptians, and they had a blue dye, and they sold it, and it was worth a lot, right? So economic necessity. Um, so, you can see the color, you just can't name it, and if you can't name it, you have trouble recognizing it. Here is Namibia, the Himba people, who are, I believe, hunter-gatherers in Namibia, and he shows them, the researcher, shows them this computer screen with the uh, the little squares in a circle, and they look at it like, they all look alike. He's like, which one is different? They're like, I don't know. They cannot see that this one, right? We can all see that's blue because we have a word for blue. But all the other green ones and the blue one, they're all basically the same color to a Himba speaker. But Himba has more words for green than we do in English. And so when they look at this one here, this chart, they're like, yeah, dude, it's that one right there, right? And we all look at it and we're like, wait, what? Which one? They all kind of look, It's really, really hard. So we find ourselves doing the same thing to this chart here that the Himba do to that chart because we don't have enough words for green. But of course, that one is slightly lighter, and they have a different color they have a different word for that color than they do for that color. So it's really just a linguistic difference. And I'm going to post another video called The Surprising Pattern Behind Color Names in the World. I'm going to post it after this one just for you to continue to talk about color. But we're going to move on. Metaphors be with you. Lakoff and Johnson, these are linguists and psychologists, human thought processes are largely metaphorical because language uses so many metaphors. We have dead metaphors, such as the conduit metaphor. Language is like a pipeline or a radio. Sometimes you've seen this in your educational metaphors for you need to have an open mind and fill your head with ideas, right? Basically, the human mind is a container, right? Education is a conduit. Go to college and fill your brain with ideas. Education is a thing to obtain. Just get an education. That says education is a thing that you can get, right? This is metaphorical. It's not really like that. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows what the real world is? We use language to describe it. When we use language, we use metaphor. Selves are pre-existing things that can be found. Find your strengths, right? You're looking for them. There's something you can find, something you can lose. You can lose your strengths, right? This is the assumption. Selves are new things that we can construct. Develop your skills or recreate yourself, right? These are all metaphorical ways. It's just showing that common sense is not really common. Common sense is very uncommon because it uses very colorful language and metaphorical speech to say things that once we start to think about them, once we start to question them, we say, well, why on earth do we say it that way? I wonder if we use a different figure of speech, a different metaphor, if we might look at education or look at ourselves or look at our skills differently if we use a different kind of metaphor. Word weavers are world makers. This is all part of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. This is all connected to the quality of gasoline. When we say things, what does that mean about the things that we're saying them about? The words we use. So what things are pliable or changeable? What things are absolute and cannot be changed? If you mistake an unchanging thing for something that can be changed, that can be frustrating, right? Because you're wasting all your time pushing, and all you have to do is just change one thing, and boom, you're through. But if you make a mistake of changing thing for something that is unchanging, you assume that's always going to be there, and all of a sudden it's gone, then you're like, whoa, who moved my cheese, right? It could be deadly because you could have needed that cheese to survive. So it's important to recognize what things can change and what things can't. Language can definitely change. Convention versus necessity. Anthropologists are experts at learning how to distinguish things people do that are conventional. They do these things out of habit or out of conditioning. That's the way you've always done it. That's the way you're expected to do it. That's the way you get rewarded for doing it. From things that are necessary for survival. If you do it the other way, you will die. Okay? If you stop doing these things, you will not be able to live. And it's really interesting to try to figure out what is conventional and what is necessary in this world, and that's what anthropologists are all doing. So convincing people that conventional things are really necessary is very useful for sales gimmicks. If you don't get this car, you will die, right? Everyone will leave you. If you don't get your braces on and straighten your teeth, nobody will ever love you. It's important for religious manipulation. If you don't give money now, the whole world is going to change. It's important for political mobilization. You have to vote for this person, or everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket, right? This is marketing. This is sales. This is outright deception. Do not believe them. Sometimes it's sincere. Sometimes these things are so common sense that the people doing the convincing are themselves true believers. I really, really thought that was the truth. But they're no less wrong for believing in their lie. And it's really important for us to be able to learn how to see through that. It can help us be more successful. It can also help us be more um, live a fuller life, finding your strengthness. A mindful approach to the world helps us see ourselves as pliable and conditional rather than fixed and absolute. We can see our capacity for growth and change. We have things that are challenges for us, and we call those weaknesses. I just can't handle that. That's too hard for me. But we can look at these as strengthnesses, because when you have a strengthness, it's an apparent weakness, but it's only because you're trying to do something one way that it looks like a weakness. If we look really hard and try a bunch of different ways, we can find that either it works somewhere else, or it generates strength over time. Okay? And I'm going to post that last video, but otherwise we are done with chapter 4.